Thank you very much. I wanted to follow up a little bit on, we've had discussion previously about this international issue, which Dr. Yu had mentioned. Can you explain to us what is currently done in terms of data sharing? And perhaps, Dr. Liu, if you could discuss if you've even contemplated now for your project, it not being a governmental project, being private, nonprofit, what you would contemplate being that data sharing aspect for your organization?
Our intention as a public nonprofit is to put the data out there so that as many scientists can see the data and use the data and warn people if there's things in the data that show that something's going to hit the Earth. So that is our plan. But actually, if I could add one other thing, don't get the impression that finding asteroids, while it is a lot of money, is something that requires enormous amounts of money. For instance, our telescope, which will find and track the great majority of these asteroids, is less than the cost of, there's a road widening project in the San Francisco Bay Area in the town of Burlingame that's more expensive than our telescope. And that's why we went about this as a private fundraising effort. We're less expensive than a museum. There's a wing of an art museum in San Francisco that costs more than our project. And that's privately raised money. It's not enormous. It's a lot for individuals, but it can be done.
If I can follow up, actually, that was very helpful because I did want to ask a little bit more. What are the specifics? What are your plans if you, obviously, we know that in the past, NASA's encountered cost overruns for a variety of reasons. What are your plans as an organization if you discover, say, in the development or in the research phase that something that you anticipated will work does not quite work the way you expected? Would you go back to funders? What does that do? And also, frankly, how close are you to raising the $450 million that you have budgeted? Will you start? Will you do it in tranches if you don't have it ready? What are your plans for ensuring that? Because we're hearing from everyone, if you don't have the money set at the outset, you end up embedding cost overruns because it just takes longer.
We are using existing technology to the extent we can, and we actually have a firm fixed price contract, which is, so in other words, the risk is borne by our contractor, Ball Aerospace. And yes, we are raising the money in tranches. This year our fundraising goal is $20 million. And we are well on our way towards that for this year.
And so how much of the total would that have you at?
Well, this really is our first full year since we've begun our fundraise. We announced on June 28th of last year. Our needs were quite small last year in the single-digit millions. This year they're accelerating, and next year they will accelerate even more. So our peak spending rate will be in the range of $100 million for a year or so, and then it will taper back down. But we can finance this over a much longer period.
And just a question for all of you somewhat. If we have congressional mandates that, say, previously would have been directed to NASA as a governmental organization, and Congress says we need to see this data because we need to make decisions, for the doctors who are not in the private entity, how would you contemplate would structure that, and how would that operate?
Well, I think it's important to point out that NASA does have a Space Act agreement with the Sentinel Group for providing navigation, tracking of their spacecraft, and the international component would be, once their data is taken, it would come through the NASA channels. It would go to the Minor Planet Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then it would come to our program office at JPL, and then we would interact with our Italian colleagues, and it would go out to the world. So it's quite a transparent data sharing process, even though it's privately funded for the most part.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that in my experience, the data on finding and tracking near-Earth objects and on predicting the orbits of them all becomes very public very quickly. There's never been a problem getting the data. The only problems are what to do with it.
Thank you all very much.